The Florida Gators have greatly exceeded my expectations on the basketball court this season. We're going to talk about it with Isaac Shade here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast and Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Friday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Joining me is Isaac Shade. Find him on Twitter at Isaac Shade and find him with Locked On College Basketball, Locked On Tar Heels. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. If you're the kind of driver that likes to push things just a little bit further, I know you do.
Tiny bit.
An adventure? Yeah, just a tiny bit. Negative. Just a tiny bit. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. And Isaac, at this point in the season, 3 games left in the regular season for the Florida Gators basketball team and Todd Golden in year 2. How have the Florida Gators performed compared to your expectations for them? Because we had you on at the start of the season, really. And personally, I was going into the season fully just, hey, make the tournament, play well, improve a bit from last year, get more consistent. And boy, have they exceeded that just a smidge. Just a little bit.
Like that Nissan read.
Yeah, how do you feel about that?
No, I'm right with you, Brandon. You talked about just a little time. I think it's been just a lot of bit that they have improved. I mean, just even looking at some of the places they were expected, they were voted 8th preseason in the SEC. They are clearly, definitively, easily, whatever word you want to say, at worst, a top 6 team. And, there's a little bit more to be decided with that here in these last 2, week and a half of the regular season. As you said, let me just take you through a little comparison of year 1 and year 2. Last year, the Gators finished 16-15, 9-9 in the regular season. They finished 16-17 overall, losing their first SEC tournament game, losing their first NIT game. They were 7-6 in non-conference play. And you contrast that with this year, where already they are 20-8, 10-5 in the SEC. They went 10-3 in non-con play, so that's already better than last year's non-con play. They matched last year's overall wins on February 10th. They matched last year's SEC wins just less than a week ago, February 24th. And we've still got, as you said, as we've talked about, 3 games left to play. So Brandon, I love this turnaround in year 2 for Todd Golden. I was actually looking back at my notes from when we chatted preseason. And one of the things we said was that year 2 for Todd Golden at San Francisco was basically his worst year there. Not so in Florida. A nice improvement, no sophomore slump for this coaching regime, and I love it.
Yeah, if this ends up being even one of his worst years in Florida, then I think we're all going to be very happy about it. I do have to ask just about, because I know last time that we spoke, we talked about the evaluation being different from when he first got hired. Going into that first year, there was a very quick turnaround. He didn't get much time to evaluate. And then you look at this year, and it's just night and day with what he did in the transfer portal and even high school recruiting. How much does that play a part in just you look at 4 or 5 starters or portal kids, and then you got big time contributors from Thomas Hug and Alex Condon that are coming in. I mean, it was just huge, right?
No, it absolutely is. In this day and age, particularly in basketball, more so than in football, I have always been a proponent of give a coach time, let him get his guys in, and let's get things figured out. Maybe so still in football, but in basketball, where I don't know if anybody out there knows how basketball works, but only 5 guys play at a time for each team. But very seriously, because of that, it just takes a couple to flip everything. And so I got no time for the excuses of Kenny Payne and Louisville aren't doing very well because, it's his second year. No, look at what Todd Golden's doing. Look at other coaches around the nation who have flipped it immediately. You just said it, Brandon. The top 3 scorers for this team are all transfers: Walter Clayton, Zion Pullen, and Tyree Samuel. That's your top 3 scorers, all of whom were not on this roster last season. Brandon, it's super fun. Like, I was looking back at those notes from when we chatted before. One of the things I said to you was, look, you add Walter Clayton to Riley Kugel and Will Richard, and you add Zion Pullen, boy, that's exciting. But probably one of those 4 dudes is coming off the bench. What I didn't expect in any way is that guy would be Riley Kugel being the one to come off the bench. That has been probably the most surprising thing about Florida this entire season. In fact, I had also said to you, hey, what if I painted a picture for you where Riley Kugel wasn't the best player on this roster, and instead it was Walter Clayton leading the way? Well, guess what? That's one of my thing. I've got a whole bunch of terrible calls about college basketball this year, but that actually turned out to be one of my best takes of the preseason, because it's been very much true. Because I had said it would be so great, because then it wouldn't all be up to Riley Kugel, and it clearly hasn't been.
Yeah, Riley is, just his minutes are more inconsistent than he is on the court.
Yeah.
It's just insane. He comes in, there was a game, I forget which game it was, but a week or two ago, he has a nice little backdoor cut. He gets a layup, comes out, doesn't come back into for the entire game. It's like, right. All right, dude's just coming in, making one shot or taking one shot, and then he's just out. And it seems like he's on a very short leash at this point. But I did want to also talk about just specifically this, I guess we'll say, this schedule where up until last night, Florida was one of 5 or 6 teams without a loss outside of quad 1. Ole Miss lost because hate them. But Ole Miss lost. They could still finish in quad 1. But how much does that help Florida when we talk about bracket seeding for the tournament? Because obviously everyone and their mother right now is just bracketology throughout.
Oh, it helps a ton, Brandon. Absolutely it does, because one of the things we look at now, because of this new quad system that's been around for a couple of years, for those who aren't aware, basically what happens is every game is slotted into one of 4 quadrants based on whether you play home, road, or away, and where the team ranks in what's called the net. That stands for the NCAA evaluation tool. And so it's not even based on, necessarily like where the team is. So for example, right now, Florida is 33rd in the net. And so it's like there's a certain sliding scale of, if you play a team on the road, they can be 1 through 75 and still be a quad 1. If you play them at a neutral site, 1 through 50 is quad 1. At home, 1 through 30 is quad 1. So there is this sliding scale. So not have, as it stands right now, where Florida does have that 1 quad 2 loss with Ole Miss, but being able to say that Florida doesn't have any losses outside of quad 2, or hopefully Ole Miss flips. They just got to go back up two little itty bitty spots in, what are those balloons? I don't know what's happening right now.
I don't know what that was, but I love it.
I'm here for that. Is AI taking over my screen right now? Anyway, assuming that Ole Miss can flip back to a quad 1, and to be able to say, hey, look, the Florida Gators don't have any losses outside of quad 1. That is a big deal, and the NCAA selection committee cares about that a lot. Now, here's where the negative is with that. Florida is 3-7 in quad 1, 3-8 if that Ole Miss loss goes back there. So you'd like to have a few more quad 1 wins, but having all the losses there, we talk about like good losses, and certainly the Gators don't have any blights on their resume in terms of just like stinker losses. And some other teams up at the top of college basketball do. Arizona has a quad 3 loss. North Carolina has a quad 3 loss, just as a couple examples.
Yeah, I think for Florida also, we do have to talk about, which we will talk about more in depth at the end of this or in the next segment. But I do have to ask, with talking about that, you'd like a few more quad 1 wins. South Carolina, you're going on the road for that one. They're currently top 20.
They're 47. Yep.
And then you have, or on the net, yeah. And then you have Alabama coming to Gainesville. That clear that up a bit?
Yep, absolutely it would, because both of the 3 remaining games, those 2, the South Carolina and Bama games, are both quad 1. And so if you could win both of those, just based on where the things sit right now, that would move you to 5-7 in quad 1. Even if you could split those, getting 4 quad 1 wins would certainly be a much better place.
Yeah, and we're about to talk about those games a little bit more in depth, but first we are going to get a quick word from Nissan. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Nissan. If you're the kind of driver that likes to push things just a little bit further, you ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. You guys know, I live in New York. It's a little bit of a city, just a smidge of a city. With Class Executive Google built in, it's always your updating assistant to call on for almost anything. And gone are the days of sitting there connecting your phone. Can't connect your phone while you're driving, that annoying stuff. Not a problem. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and the Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. Isaac Shade, I do have to ask you about these last three games for the Florida Gators. Where in the regular season, you've got at South Carolina, you host Alabama, and then you have at Vanderbilt. What are you looking for from this Florida Gators team in those final three games?
Yeah, in totality, I think Florida really needs to go 2-1. The Vandy game, like let me start by saying this, Brandon. I know the Mizzou game on Wednesday was like, oh my gosh, why didn't we put that away? Why wasn't it better? Let me say this to Gator Nation. I am not concerned one bit about having some trouble with Mizzou. Do you know why? Because it's a conference win in late February where every win, no matter how you get it, is a big deal, no matter who it's against. End of discussion. So let's just put that to rest. It's a win. We're happy. We move on. The same thing is true about Vanderbilt. The Gators should easily win that game in Nashville. And I don't care how it happens. Look, they just beat Arkansas, right? Like Coach Stackhouse's team can get some wins. So I don't care if you win by 1 point or 50, you get that win and then you move on to the SEC tournament. But before that, this game tomorrow, Saturday, at South Carolina, and then coming up on Tuesday, hosting Bama. You just got to win one of those, I think. And not from like, you might miss the NCAA tournament. No, like Florida's in a great spot right now, like somewhere between a 6 to 8 seed if I were seeding things today. So I'm not concerned about that. But going 2-1 down this final stretch of the regular season, I think definitely keeps you in that realm of 6 to 8 and maybe could just slide up to 5 or 6. So to me, if I'm the coaching staff, I'm like, look, take care of business Saturday at South Carolina, win this game. And then in some ways, if you'll allow me this, Bama just becomes a little bit of icing on the cake. It's like, if we win Saturday, we'd obviously love to beat Alabama, but it's less important if you take care of business on Saturday.
Yeah, I need that Alabama win. Like I need water. I just want to throw that one after that last game that they played a few weeks ago, where it was just, I mean, overtime loss to Alabama in Alabama, and it was just, I mean, one of the game of the year candidates. I mean, definitely game of the year for me.
So good.
Gators. It was just an incredible game. I need that win where you now get them on your home court, and I have to say that watching Florida games in Gainesville, like on broadcast, is amazing because half the time you can't hear the commentators because they have it right behind the student section and it's just screaming right into it. And I need that Alabama win, just obviously for the actual victory itself and how that would go for your seeding, but just
and let's say that too, Brandon. Like as you think about these two games, the South Carolina matchup is the lone matchup of the season between the Gamecocks and Gators, and so not only does winning that game help SEC tournament seeding and NCAA tournament seeding, but it also gives you the tiebreaker. And with this log jam that we have at the top of the SEC right now, you want every advantage you can get with that. And same thing with Bama. You know, I know as you were just saying, you lose round one of that, but if you could split the season series and maybe end up with the tiebreaker over the Crimson Tide, that'd be great as well.
I do have to ask about the SEC this year because, like you said, logjam. I like to say bottleneck, where you got 6 teams in the top 25, 6 teams with 10 plus conference wins, and depending on how Mississippi State, if they win 2 of their last 3, LSU wins out. You're gonna have 8 teams with 10 conference wins. How does that bode not just for seeding the SEC tournament we're obviously going to have, but just with the actual results of the SEC tournament, if Florida goes in there and they've got, I mean, a hell of a matchup in the first round, how deep does the SEC tournament impact their NCAA tournament run?
I think it'll be based on how these 3 final regular season games go. I mean, legitimately, I think Florida's in a place now where I would call them a lock for the NCAA tournament. And I take that term quite literally, meaning they could go 0-3 down the stretch and lose their first SEC tournament game and still be in, right? Obviously, the seed wouldn't be as good, but I'm not concerned about the Gators not getting there. However, because of the strength of this conference, and it is an incredibly strong conference outside of Mizzou. But you know what? We just beat Mizzou, so we'll take that. Like, it is incredibly strong, and so the teams at the top doing this well and having a couple really bad teams at the bottom. Like, I cannot figure out the Razorbacks, man. That is bonkers to me still. But you got to keep taking advantage of it. And these teams at the top have just stacking wins, as you said, already 6 teams with double-digit conference wins and a possibility of at least one more, maybe 2, as you said, if LSU can win out. So, Brandon, as you look at it and you think ahead to the SEC tournament, the big thing is getting a top 4 seed, because that gets you a double bye where you don't start playing until Friday. Right now, already, if Florida lost out, went 0-3 down the stretch, they have already clinched at least a single bye and no worse than the 7 seed. That's because LSU is 8th in the standings right now. They already have 8 wins, and Florida can't get the 8 wins. In fact, if Florida wins at South Carolina on Saturday, they would clinch no worse than 6th, because Mississippi State, they hold the tiebreaker over them. But that's not what we're looking at here, man. If I'm a Florida Gator, I want to win all of these and get to a top 4 seed. And that is very, very doable. You look at that bottleneck, rubberneck. What did you call it? Bottleneck? I'm here for that. Tennessee and Bama tied atop the standings right now, 12-3. South Carolina third, all alone at 11-4. And then Florida, Kentucky, and Auburn all tied at 10-5. But if you beat South Carolina on Saturday, that brings you into a tie with them. And then we'll see, obviously, what Kentucky and Auburn do. But really legitimately in great shape for a top 4 seed, but you just got to keep winning out.
Yeah, and I feel like if Florida wins out, especially, it's kind of one of those, like, it's completely in your hand things, because South Carolina has Florida on Saturday. Then on Wednesday, they host Tennessee, and then they end the year with Mississippi State. So it's not like South Carolina has an easy end of this schedule by any stretch of the word. And so right now, when you're one conference game behind them, you can get that tiebreaker if you win. I feel like that could be just absolutely huge for seeding purposes here.
It 100% will be. And the set, like, Tennessee's closing stretch is probably the toughest maybe in all of college basketball. I haven't compared around, but Auburn and Kentucky and Bama, it's nuts. So there's a lot still to be decided atop the SEC, and I cannot wait for these last 3 games each.
Yeah, we're getting to one of the best times of the year, and I know for you it's the best time of the year, which 100%. We are about to get a bit more in depth on the actual NCAA tournament after we get a quick word from FanDuel, who's going to take all of my money during this run. I just want to make that one clear. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just saying. There's a lot that you can go with. A little -800. You won't make much from it, but you get $150 in bonus bets. One thing you shouldn't do is bet on Keegan Murray threes, because on Wednesday night, I had Keegan Murray to make 4 threes. Would have won me a lot of money. Just want to say that. It was a parlay. Only leg that missed was that Keegan Murray made 3 threes in the first quarter and then finished the game 3 for 8, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he stunk that one up. But hey, it's so much fun. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. Remember that FanDuel is an official partner of the NBA. To wrap up today's episode of Locked On Gators, we're talking with Isaac Shade here of Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Tar Heels. And I'm just going to throw this at you and just let you run with it here. How deep of a run do you think this Florida Gators team can make?
That's a great question, Brandon. I like it. Well, as I said earlier, right now, Florida, depending on where you look, is anywhere. I've seen them anywhere from a 6 to an 8 seed. My favorite website to check out, a lot of people will go to Joe Lunardi at ESPN or Jerry Palm at CBS. The best place to go is actually called bracketmatrix.com. It's an amalgamation of 114 different bracketologists. And then they just take all the averages of all of those and you kind of see where teams are at. Right now, Florida is a 7 seed at Bracket Matrix. And so that's good. You would be playing a 10 seed in the first round. If you get by that, it's either probably playing a 2 unless they get upset and on from there. I legitimately not even in a dream world, Florida is good enough and there's enough parity in college basketball that this could be a second weekend NCAA tournament team, meaning a Sweet 16 team. If the bracket breaks the right way, there's no reason they couldn't keep going past that. But, unless things just fall apart, which I, again, do not expect them to, this is a team that will be the better seed in their first round matchup. And you really want that to be a 7 or better, because as soon as you get to 8 or 9, then you got to play a 1 seed in the second round. And that would not be ideal, especially this year where we have three teams that are basically already locked in on the 1 seed line. It's the fourth 1 seed. We're still waiting to find out. But if Florida can get past that, and then you see what you get in round 2, and no reason that this team can't do it. What are some of the differences for me this year, Brandon? Let me give you 3 things that I think could really help Florida, that have been helping Florida as you compare it to last year, and that could really make a difference once we get to the NCAA tournament. Number 1 is improved offense. Last year, the Gators finished 139th in offensive efficiency. For frame of reference, there were 363 Division I teams last year in college basketball. So 139, not great, but not, miserable. But this year, they are 15th. That is a massive leap in offensive efficiency. I would put that in the elite level. Now, the defense has not been as good as it was last year. So if they can just move the needle a little bit on defense, the offense is good enough that they can get through a game just based on outscoring a team alone. Secondly, improved offensive rebounding. Last year, Florida got 23.8% offensive rebounds, meaning they rebounded 23.8% of their missed shots. This year, that has risen to 39.4%. That's basically 16 percentage points up. Same kind of thing, Brandon. You ready for this? They were 320th in that stat last year. Right now, they are third in the country in offensive rebounding percentage. What that means is that, we just talked about how good the offense is, but even in a game where the offense is not hitting on all cylinders, they are getting to the offensive glass and can get those second chance points. That is critically important in the NCAA tournament. And thirdly, 3-point field goal percentage. Last year, 31.4%. This year, up to 33.6%. Now, that doesn't sound massive, just like a 2 percentage points increase, but it's good enough to move the Gators from 313th in the nation to 188th in the nation. And 3-point, field goal percentage is something that is a great equalizer in basketball in this day and age. So those 3 things are 3 of the keys that I think could be really beneficial for Florida in making it to the second weekend.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that we see pretty much every March Madness is that teams with good experienced guards tend to make these deeper runs. You look at Kansas State last year when they had Marquise Noel. You look at, UConn, the Kemba years, and it was just teams with those experienced guard play. I feel like they make deep runs, and this just circles back for me again to Todd Golden's ability to build this roster, was having Zion Poulin and Walter Clayton Jr. I feel like he's really shaped them to, whether they make a Sweet 16 run, whatever it is, you can look at the roster and say Todd Golden's built a roster that is built to make a run in the tournament.
You are not wrong about that, my friend. We talk all the time about the critical importance of guard play, experienced talented guard play in March Madness. I'm just going to keep adding those adjectives because they all matter, right? It's not just about having good guard play. It's experienced and it's talented as well. And that is what Coach Golden has with these guys. And so, and having a multitude of them. So if there's a game where Walter Clayton's off, well, hopefully Zion Pullen's on. Or you talked about Riley Kuhl's inconsistency. Well, if both of those guys are off, maybe It's a Riley Kugel. Like, you just don't know. But thankfully, you have enough guys in your stable to where hopefully at least one of them, if not multiples of them, are rolling on any given day.
Yeah, I feel like before I let you go, I just want to ask one more question where I
Sure.
feel like a lot of the conversation does go to Walter Clayton Jr. emerging as a leading scorer and like really taking kind of the reins of there, and Micah Hanlogton as an insane offensive
Yeah,
rebound.
how have we not even mentioned his name yet
Dude's
today?
just an animal on the boards. It's amazing. I love to see it. Tyrese Samuel has had his moments where he just goes off, and he's also had moments where he's been rather lackadaisical, but he's been on as of late more often than not. But I do want to just ask about Zion Pullen just a little bit in depth, because I feel like he's been incredible in terms of distributing the ball while also taking care of it. And that's the kind of thing that reminds me of, I'm not saying Zion Pullen is Marquise Noel or that they're going to have a run like Kansas State had, but it reminds me of that we saw last year where Marquise Noel was taking care of the ball so well during the tournament and distributing so well, where he was just dishing out assists here and there. And I just want to get Zion Pullen his flowers just a little bit for that.
I will give Zion Pullen all the flowers, because how cool or how important is it not only that he's this team's second leading scorer at 15.3 points per game, but he's not just a guy that's calling his own number all the time. This man is averaging 4.9 assists and just 1.2 turnovers, which, by the way, is a career low in turnovers. That's phenomenal from him, but also a career high in assists. So that assist to turnover ratio mixed with the ability to call his own number when he needs to, Zion Pullen might be, because of those things, the most important player in March for the Gators.
And there it is. Thank you so much, Isaac. This is Isaac Shade with Locked On College Basketball, Locked On Tar Heels. I'm Brandon Olsen with Locked On Gators. We'll see you all, tomorrow after Florida State hopefully beats South Carolina. Hopefully we'll be able to go live after that. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Follow Isaac at Isaac Shade. And we'll see you all next time.